Great Scott, friends! It looks like we're going back to the future again! That's right, friends. Today we are taking a look at NECA's Ultimate Doc Brown, which is the 1955 version today, as played by Christopher Lloyd, and it's specifically Doc Brown from the clock tower scene where he, sets up the lightning bolt to go into the DeLorean and finally send Marty back to the future, just like the title implies. And we know it's him from that scene because he has the rip in his pants from, when the cable snagged him and he almost dropped the cable when he was climbing the tower. And wow, look at the texture on those pants. Like, that is pretty good. But there's some big issues. So, first of all, this bandage, both of these, should not be here. Like, when he was setting up the cable in that final scene, which is when he's wearing these clothes, he didn't have the bandage. And when he had the bandage and he first met Marty, he had different clothes on, but it does come with an alternate head that doesn't have that bandage. However, it's doing like this crazy expression from when Doc was in the lab and he showed Marty their plan with a little toy car, and the toy car went off the table and like lit some rags on fire. That's when he was like, and he didn't have the giant wound on his head, but that is what this expression is from. He didn't really make that expression when they were setting up the clock tower to send him back to the future for real at the end, and Doc was wearing all these clothes. So the proper head he should have is sort of like a mix of these two, like a neutral face, or at least this face. I don't know how neutral Christopher Lloyd's face could possibly be. Like, that's one heck of an expression, right? But he should have a face more like this, but with a wound more like that, without the bandages, if we're actually trying to be accurate to the scene where he's wearing these clothes. Or maybe the head is accurate and then all the clothes are wrong. No, I don't think so. I think they should have given us like a head with sort of combined features. But I mean, look at the sculpt on the head. Like what I was saying earlier is a minor nitpick. Like, oh, not 100% accurate to the scene. Which scene is it each head from? I mean, who cares when you look at it? That is Christopher Lloyd. That is Doc Brown. Look, they even got a little like cheek mole in there. Like, oh, and stubble sculpted and it actually looks like stubble, because they like painted it with, oh man, it looks so good. And then the eyes are bugging out. And look at the little pink hues under the eyes. I mean, I'm not even on the paint yet, but the paint really accentuates the sculpt on the head here as far as I'm concerned. Now, his hair might seem like a little bit too bushy. Like, this is more like Crazy Mad Scientist than how Doc actually looked in the 50s in the movie. But I get, like, NECA's sculpts are always a little bit bigger than the hair seems to be, because hair in real life you can see, like, a lot through it, and in plastic form you can't. So that explains that. It is very accurate, the hair at least, to the movie, to how he is in it. And then so are all these clothes, and man, this sculpt on the rubber overlay here is like, it's got these really thin little lines in it to help give it that cloth illusion. I mean, like, you can tell more on the collar. Like on the body it's just white and it's plain, and I think they could have used some wrinkles sculpted in here and there, because the coat also looks kind of plain, honestly, when you look on the inside. The outside's a bit better because you got sculpted wrinkles and textures, like a little seam line running down the center and buttons and everything. But when you're pulling it open, that coat's very, very plain. And same with the shirt. Like, I mean, it's got the texture, but I feel like some wrinkles would have helped. Pants are definitely the best. Like, that texture looks really, really cool. And then, like I said earlier, there's the rip to let us know exactly what scene this is from in the movie. The socks look a little odd to me. Like, are socks this textured? Like, they also look like they're kind of bulging out, but I get this part of the articulation that the shoe has to rotate around the, ball joint there. And, we got sculpted, like, what are these? Laces, latches. It's not Velcro, because this was before Velcro, but like, Doc had like Velcro shoes before Velcro shoes existed. Maybe he invented Velcro in the movie. Nah, I don't think that's true. He just has some sort of like belt buckle on his shoes instead of actual laces, which to me is a little bit odd, but that's how they were in the movie. Nick actually got it right. And there's even sculpted texture on the bottom of the shoes. The textures, pretty much from the waist down, are gold. The balls for the socks on the ankles look a little big to me, but that's very minor. I think we could have used some more folded details and stuff on the shirt, maybe. And then, like I said, I don't know how accurate the head sculpt is to that exact scene, but it is very accurate to how he looks in the movie overall. So this is kind of like a more generic Doc Brown, I guess. It looks really great. I think they could have done a little bit better with, a specific scene accuracy, but in terms of movie accuracy, very, very good. Sculpt is great. I mean, we also know it's Doc Brown from in the clock tower scene when, in the lightning strikes, because he was wearing the gloves to set up the cables to capture the electricity and the 1.21 gigawatts and all that stuff. So that is that. Paint. So it doesn't look like there's much on the shirt, but if you realize that all those little squiggles are there and accurate and clean, that's very impressive paint. I mean, it doesn't quite continue on the back, but I mean, when will you lift the coat up? in the back. I mean, well, I guess I am doing it now. So that's a little odd, but I mean, whatever. You're mostly never going to see that anyways. A little button on the collar is not painted there, but I guess it could have been black. Buttons on the coat are painted, thankfully. You know, and the pants, they're just brown, but they look good with the texture. The front, that's from the Sculpt, but I mean, the paint, they don't really have any paint, honestly. Paint on the shoes and the ankles, kind of clean. I mean, it looks kind of messy for the socks, but I guess that is more from the texture of the Sculpt. It's a little hard to discern. And then the buckles on the shoes, man, those are clean. I mean, it comes with some alternate hands that we'll be looking at later, and like, well, we could just look at them now, I guess. The paint on the watches on those hands is not as clean as the buckles on the shoes. Like, what is going on there exactly? And then, like, yeah, it's a little better over here, but I mean, when you see, like, flesh tones dip onto the watch, it's all right. Don't get me wrong, but I've seen better quality from NECA before, and then the shoes are just great. The face is definitely the winner, though. I mean, it doesn't look like there's a lot of paint, but there really is. They got the red for the wound, the white for the bandages, the white for the eyebrows and the hair has multiple colors in it. Looks like it's got a little bit of a wash, too. Really good sculpt, accentuated by paint. Look, the lips are painted. The rings under the eyes are painted. 2 different colors. There's pink, and then there's like a darker flesh tone for the bags under the eyes, because, you know, well, this is 1955. Doc, so he's not that old. Not like as old as he is in 85, but I mean, like, wow, look at the rosiness on the cheeks, and it's not overdone like it was on the Marty McFly figures. It just looks really, really spectacular all around. And then stubble, wash for the stubble. Man, the paint is just like grade A on the head. And the head sculpt is grade A, or at least it would be if it were scene accurate, but I mean, like I said, it shouldn't have the bandages and, you know, whatever. The point is, for the scene it should be from, it's not quite accurate, but for whatever scene he had the, you know, bandages in, like when Marty first meets him, it's amazingly accurate. But then it doesn't quite match the body, you know, but who cares? The paint and the sculpt work are top notch on this guy. On the head, the body can be a little plain here and there, but it's still very, very good on the body. I think the weakest point is between the neck and the waist. Waist down looks pretty great with the sculpt. The head just kills it with the sculpt and the articulation. I don't have much more to say about him. Now for the articulation. Doc's head's on a ball joint, of course. Gets very good attitude side to side. Can look so far down, so far up, spins all the way around. These shoulders are on hinge and swivel, and they are pretty stiff like that. That's as far as they're going. They're not getting up to 90, unfortunately, but they do swivel all the way around, of course. No bicep swivel, unfortunately, but it does have double elbows, and they swivel at both points, which, you know, kind of negates the need for a bicep swivel, so I'm okay with that. Hinge and swivel wrists get pretty decent range and spin all the way around. Underneath this rubber shirt piece, Doc appears to have 2 joints. He does seem to have a diaphragm joint. Lets him go up and down a little bit. Kind of get a little bit of side to side, but I mean, the coat obviously hinders it because the coat's a big rubber piece on top of that. However, he can swivel all the way around, but he's swiveling at the top joint that's in there. And the lower joint, more at the waist, does seem to swivel, but that is what the creaking you're hearing is. So it seems like it doesn't swivel very well. It was definitely stuck when I first got it, but it can swivel at both. It's just if you're just going to swivel him like that, he's going to swivel at the top, at the diaphragm, and not at the waist. The hips are on NECA's improved ball joint scheme. He can do the splits so far. Each leg can go forward so much and back just a little bit because he's got a rubber crotch piece, and, you know, the rubber coat in the back kind of hinders him going back, but those are pretty good. They can also swivel. Not as much as I'd like, but pretty good, and they're loosening up, and they're so squeaky, and they're getting better and better each time I swivel them. Single hinge knee gets almost to 90 and can swivel like so. And then Marvel Legends style, you know, hinge and pivot ankles. Now, I initially thought that was pretty much it for articulation. However, even though he has a ball joint at the neck, he also has some other kind of joint at the lower neck, because this neck is just swiveling with his head here. I'm not sure if it's a ball joint because it doesn't seem to be getting too much range. I guess it is a ball joint because I can move the neck a little bit independently, but I mean, it's effectively just a swivel because it, you know, doesn't move much. It's also kind of effectively redundant because the head already swivels, so I don't know what the point of having the neck joint is. But not so redundant is an extra joint down at the ankles, because even though these pivot like so, the actual ankle joint itself can pivot, and I'll do it with the leg with the rip pants because it's easier to see. The actual joint can pivot up inside those pants, which is pretty cool, and it is, you know, something that's on both. It's just much easier to notice on the ripped pants there. So he has pretty standard articulation, and he's got 2 more points. One of them's pretty useless at the bottom of the neck, and one of them's actually pretty smart at the bottom of the ankle there, or at the top of the ankle, I guess. I like the articulation. The packaging for Doc Brown is pretty different than the ones we looked at for the Marty McFly figures earlier. It doesn't have a movie poster on the front. Instead, it has this sort of CGI-looking drawing of Doc Brown's desk, I guess, and it is 1955 Doc's desk, even though it has the clock tower flyer there. That's the one that Marty brought him from the future, so, you know, that all adds up right there. Still has the Back to the Future 35th anniversary sticker sort of slapped on kind of crooked on there, and, you know, it's on there even though this definitely came out in 2021, not 2020, way after the anniversary. It's the 36th anniversary, but, you know, who cares? Up on the top, it says Ultimate Doc Brown. On the side, same thing, pretty much the same as Marty. Got the 3 dates there, got the Ultimate Doc Brown on the side, both sides, and Back to the Future logo up at the top. On the back, we get some cool photos of the figure and other figures in the line. I've looked at the Martys, not going to get Biff, and nobody seems to want this guy. This is a serious peg warmer, like I've said before. If we open it up, they are still using, like, the real weak glue that's coming off on the edge a little for the Velcro that sticks. But on the inside, we get to see Doc Brown in front of a photo from the film, which depicts the clock tower. And like I said earlier, this is definitely Doc Brown from the final scene set in the 50s where, you know, they finally send Marty back home. And then he's on the inside here, nicely packed. Let's get him out and take a closer look. So now that the Doc Brown tray is out of the box, we can see a little bit more of the backdrop, but he's also got that accessory, which is the blueprints that's still glued on in there. Well, I guess I'll just slide this all the way out. And you gotta peel real gentle if you don't want to damage this card insert. But once we got it out, we can see that this is actually Doc's house from the 50s in the first movie, which is kind of cool. Now, Doc has a twist tie around the ankles there, and then I've never done this on a figure before, but he has one around each shoulder, which, you know, why not just put one through each of these holes and have it go around the chest? I guess it doesn't look as nice for the window box, but definitely makes it harder to get these things out of their trays. And it's not like those twist ties are even necessary because Doc's arms are, you know, slotted through the tray, so, I mean, most of the body's pretty secure, even without bendy wires. But once those are out, he can slide out fairly well. It's pretty standard NECA Ultimate, you know, window box packaging. It's fine. It's collector friendly. They don't really need as many twist ties though. Now for accessories, Doc comes with the alternate head that we saw earlier, the wrench used to set up the lightning catching equipment, a pair of lab safety goggles, alternate left and right hands, and this big old set of blueprints along with a sketch of the flux capacitor and Marty's letter to Doc. Now, scene accuracy aside, the sculpt on both of the heads is really good, but, you know, like I said earlier, this head probably shouldn't have the bandages, or this one should be screaming, or they should be some kind of amalgamation of the two, but, I mean, NECA gave us 2 heads instead of giving us 1, so can I really complain that much? Either way, the heads pop off easy enough, but popping one on is actually quite a strain. I mean, I got it. It's on there nice and firm, but, wow, is it a stiff joint? I think, you know, that could be a little easier, but I'm not complaining. At least it's a satisfying click, and I can tell when it's all the way on, and that expression is just hilarious. I like this Doc Brown. Now, the details on that wrench are just really good. It is, like, got some kind of dry brush silver on top of that reddish brown. It looks amazing. And then the silver, that parts that are supposed to be silver are just so clean. And then this looks like worn metal up at the top. It really looks like a really good, well-worn wrench. Sculpt on is just fantastic. He can hold it in his right hand with the gloved hands on, at least. Well, it's in there nice and firm. Looks pretty good. No complaints with it, really. Next up, Doc has these lab safety goggles, and they are pretty rubbery and pretty thin and frail. It feels like you could snap them pretty easily. But on top of that, they are like solid black, like sunglasses there. But in the film, they had like clear lenses you could see right through. In fact, on the packaging on the back, you can see like the Doc Brown. I guess maybe that's a prototype in there. But the one with the glasses on in the little preview picture has the clear ones. It's like you can see through. I guess you would have to cut out some plastic material to get that more accurate. But if you wanted to get it on his head, it's going to be pretty tough because he has all this hard plastic sculpted hair in the way. So NECA came up with a solution for that, which is leave this like ring gap underneath the hair so you can like pop a head off and then like slide it on. But it is pretty tricky to do because you gotta stretch the goggles over his face and stretch this part in the back simultaneously over that lip of plastic there. And I kind of worry that I'm gonna break it every time I do it. And I mean, if you start below his nose, it's pretty difficult. Like, get this up above his ear, maybe. It might help if you have like some small object to poke it further up the cracking there. But like, I'm not even trying to align him perfectly, and that's already pretty good on his eyes there. But of course, you really want him, above his eyes, up on his forehead, and that's when you gotta stretch some extra. And it is worrisome because you feel like you're gonna break this little rubbery piece, but just let it stretch like a rubber band kind of, and yeah, it kind of works. Let's actually get it on, the screaming head, because that's the scene that these are from. There we go, not too bad. It can definitely be done, friends. I guess the goggles aren't 100% accurate in that they have those black lenses. They should probably remove that material and then they'd just be rings, but that would make them way too frail at this scale. So, I can forgive NECA for that. And honestly, they feel kind of frail already. When you're stretching them on, there's definitely a fear that you're going to rip them. So let's just say that now that they're on this head, I'll just be leaving them there, Next up, Doc comes with his ungloved hands, which, each get a watch because Doc did wear multiple watches in the movie. And, his hands were ungloved most of the time in the movie, but, he wore gloves for the final scene, which was the final scene in the 50s, which this does depict Doc in. Anyways, let's pop the gloved hands off. Ooh, little stiff. I'm sure they'll loosen up with time. Interesting to note, they are only painted on the front, and it looks like there's a separate piece down there, and there is some paint that just came off from inside of the joint, so I guess they are painted flesh for whatever reason, or no, they're painted. Where'd this brown paint come from? They're not painted flesh color. They're molded in a, can we get close enough to see? They're molded in this grayish color, and there's skin tone paint on there? Then what's this? Is this a separate piece that's been glued on, molded in brown, I guess? That's so weird. Where'd the brown paint come from? I don't know. Either way, the paint's coming out of the joints and it's not great. Thankfully, though, what is great is the watches are sculpted on instead of being separate pieces, because they would just get lost and fly off, and that hand pops in pretty well. The head pops off easier than it pops on. The hands pop in easier than they pop off, though. Looks good with the hands like that. Probably keep them like this most of the time, because, Doc Brown only wore those brown gloves really for one scene, and most of the time he was like this. Only not with the gaping mouth, Now, the final accessories are kind of a 3-for-1 deal, because it's all in one little package, but it's really just 3 pieces of paper. Here is Doc's sketch of the flux capacitor they came up with after he hit his head. And, you saw the movie, and yeah, it's pretty accurate. It's weird to me how it is a flat piece of paper, and then it's like got crunches and folds of crumpled up paper printed on there, but I mean, hey, I don't know. What was NECA going to do? Print a piece of paper and then crumple it up and then flatten it out and put it on the thing? That's so odd, right? Then we got Marty's letter to Doc. It might be pretty hard to discern on camera, but it does say Lou's Cafe up there and has a little picture of a chef head in the return address corner. And do not open until 1985, underlined just like he did in the movie. On the back, we got this fold of the envelope just printed on. I would kind of expect NECA to actually print a piece of paper with a little envelope lid and then actually fold it, with their attention to detail and all. But, this is fine. I'm not complaining. I would have been fine with the accessories without that even included. Last up, we got some blueprints, and these are blueprints of Doc Brown's house. I guess they were in the movie, but what's most interesting about them is if you zoom on in, this says residence of something Gamble, Pasadena, California, which is actually the residence they shot Doc Brown's house exteriors at for the movie. That was the Gamble house. Ever hear of Procter & Gamble? Yeah, that Gamble. That's that dude's house, not in Doc Brown's. On the back, it's just like white, and I guess that's fine. Anyways, good amount of accessories. Probably should have included an alternate head with his crazy mind-reading contraption on it, but that would have been a lot of plastic, and NECA probably just preferred to print a few pieces of paper instead. I'm not complaining, though. It's still a good amount of accessories, and they're really cool. Scale time, Ultimate Doc Brown stands at almost 7.5 inches, or 19 centimeters tall. Here he is with Part 1 Marty and Part 2 Marty, your standard 6-inch superhero figures. And for a 7-inch scale comparison, Rambo, Commando, Robocop the Terminator, Alien, and Predator. At the end of the day, friends, I love this Doc Brown figure. Is it 100% scene accurate? No, which, honestly is kind of surprising, coming from NECA and all. But did they pick the best Doc Brown expression ever to give us as a head sculpt? Yes, they did. Look at that gaping mouth as he turns around right there. And did they give us the best Christopher Lloyd head sculpts ever? I mean, that is an amazing likeness. It's just such high quality. I think there are some nitpicks here or there, but nothing to keep you from buying this figure if you find it. So, until next time, peace out, YouTube.